Hello, everyone, and welcome to our fifth episode. And today we're going to be starting to touch on conceptual modeling, and we'll do that by talking a bit about attributes as well as a primary key and a little bit more about foreign keys. In the last episode, we spoke about entities, and we said that entities is sort of like a shell. It's the chart or table in which we keep all our information. And today we're going to be speaking about what type of information we want to put inside of these tables. When we go further inside of an entity, we'll find these attributes that we've chosen. And this is what the information is really about. And so we might say that we want an entity that is an employee, but that on its own does not give us much information. To get information that we want and we need to stock the entity with attributes that say specific information about our employees, such as maybe a first name, surname, salary, employee ID, social security number, and the like. And it is these attributes that will help us uniquely identify each entity occurrence inside of the entity type. So, as you can see here on the screen, we have an entity labeled employee, and we have what seems to be a key. This is PK, which is short for primary key. Now, as a primary key, we are going to choose to put employee ID. Employee ID. Now I know I put a big E here, which is not correct, so we're gonna change that. The best practice is actually to use lowercase for the first word, and then for each new word that you use as an attribute, you'll do the first letter in that new word as a capital letter. Now, since we only have two attributes inside of this entity, we're gonna go with a salary here. Salary. There we go. So, it's important to know what type of information that the database might be subject to handle before you choose which attributes to put inside of your entity. Say the database is supposed to handle the sale of items in a store and handle the logistics inside of the store, then it might not be very pertinent to keep salary information on employees in that database, but maybe keep that information inside of a separate one for economics of the business. If you have done your research and data collection, as well as having gone through the functional transactions, then the attributes needed should not be an issue. However, sometimes it's necessary to assume certain things for a business because it might be an obvious demand, such as having the names of all employees on file, even if it's not expressly said during the data collection phase. Now here you'll see we've structured the data a little bit more. We got an employee ID, we have a first name, a surname, a telephone number or a phone number, a date of work when they started work. We have an ICE number in case of emergency number, so should something happen we know who to call, as well as an address. Now, after these attributes have been secured, it's time to move on to secure the primary key inside of the entity, and each entity have to have one primary key that can identify each entity occurrence. A primary key is a unique identifying feature of the entity occurrence that allows us to identify a specific person or item depending on what the entity is holding information about. If we go back to our employee example as we have here, we can say that our primary key in this example would perhaps be the employee ID as we put on the top. This is an independent entity because the employee ID does not rely on anything, and there can not exist two employees with the same employee ID, since that would negate the meaning of having unique attributes. Sometimes the primary key is not readily available to us, as in this example. We might have an employee entity with just a name and a surname as well as a date of employment. And in this case, so if we were to, for instance, block out the employee ID like so, so that does not exist in this. What we can do is we can choose to make a combined primary key by utilizing the first name, surname, so we utilize that together with the date of work to get a primary key. However, it's best practice not to use these combined primary keys, since they cannot be reliably unique as a primary key, as there may be a moment in time when we employ two people named, let's say, Sophia Patrickson, and both employees are employed at the same date and the same time. Then this would cause a duplicate in the primary key position. Now, one can argue that the likelihood of this happening would be low, but all the same it's important to keep all possibilities to a minimum when dealing with primary keys. And so introducing the employee ID here would be the best choice of action. I'm going to be speaking a little bit more about foreign keys here as well, to make understanding the next episode that we're going to be looking at a little bit better. Now, foreign keys are attributes in our entity that is referencing a primary key in another attribute. So let's see, we go back to our example where we have a customer, a sale, and an employee. Now, the sale that we are making with the customer would obviously have something referencing the customer itself, which we find down below in the foreign key. Now, foreign key is shorted as FK. We would also find it referencing a specific employee through the employee ID, and we would also find these in the foreign key. Now, what this means is that for each sale ID that we have, so each sale that we do, we can go into the sale and we can see, oh, this was made by customer ID number, say 10. And then we take this and we put it into our customer table to see that the customer ID number 10 goes to Lars Eriksson. And then we would know that the one who bought the latest Toyota was Lars Eriksson. And maybe he has the need to buy a new Toyota a year from now when we release the next version of it. Foreign keys are the way in which we can create relationships within our relational database management system. Although a primary key have to be unique, a foreign key can occur several times in the same attribute inside of an entity. Even though it's unique on one side, over here on the customer, a customer might have, customer ID might occur within sale 50 times. It might occur 100 times. It does not matter because it's a foreign key. What it identifies is another table in which it's unique. It's worth noting that these foreign keys are to be placed inside of the logical model, which we will go through later, but it's important for you to know how a relationship works as we move into building our conceptual model, which is incidentally what we're going to be talking about further in the next episode. So thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next episode.